And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Lunch and Learn on September 25th, 2021. Today's topic will be on leading with confident humility. It's also a topic that we spoke about and introduced to our cohort on Wednesday. I always find this one of the more denser lessons to be taught in a group setting because it really lends itself for more one-to-one interaction. And I look forward to working with each one of the students over the next week and more and beyond to really dive into each of the areas of opportunity to really identify who you are as a leader today and where you can leverage your strength as well as, look for opportunity for improvement and utilize some of the techniques that we will talk about today. So thank you, everybody, for being here. For those of you who were not able to come, again, this will be recorded and will be posted in Thinkific for you to see at any time. This also will be available on the free Dutch membership page for shared knowledge and learning. So Okay, so let's start off with a statement here that true humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. So one of the things that I talk about often as one of the hallmarks of the Leadership Academy is about creating these behaviors and habits that support your team, that creates deep knowledge, skills, and abilities to not only lead yourself in a humble, confident manner, but also parlay that on your team members. If we do this right over time, you learn how to lead your people in a more refined way to deep insight of yourself, how to utilize the tools in order to engage them on a daily basis. Couple that with problem-solving skills or understanding problems at the root cause, and then looking at critical issue analysis or learning to prioritize your work and operationalize your team. Supported by behavior smarts. In other words, how can I couple my technical skills with the behaviors in order to really drive performance? But it really all starts with I, right? Even though here it is not about you in an egocentric way, but here it is really about how can I learn about myself, how I lead, and even more, how am I perceived as a leader? Now, leaders can be people of one, right? You lead yourself, or you can be a leader of many, or you can be an aspiring leader. It really doesn't make a difference, and it's never too early to dive into this process to understand, because it will only help you prepare for the future. And I believe that if you do this well, if you learn to find that balance between humility and confidence, that you get more out of your team and you'll get more out of your own life. You will feel better about the work that you're doing. So the confident humility model that we discussed is really looking at 4 quadrants. Although our aim is to be in the confident humility, the top right-hand corner, where we have a healthy intrinsic worth, again, separating worth from performance, where we have strength of character, where we're looking at our who we are and what we value, where we have these competencies that are relevant and credible, where we remain open and teachable to new experience and new actions, that we think of thinking from people's others' perspectives. In other words, how can I walk a mile in somebody else's shoes? What are they thinking and feeling and sensing around that? And in a true sense of responsibility, without placing blame. Now, that's the perfect world if you are totally working in that top right-hand corner, but that's really not the case. And one of the things that I'll encourage you as students or listeners or participants on the membership page to do at the back end of this presentation, and that will be our discussion, where do you see yourself today? And it is very likely that you can identify yourself in each one of these quadrants to some extent. It is only once you understand where you are, you validate this by having discussions with your peers, with your subordinates, and then with the people who lead you, that you get a confirmation of what it is that you do, how you are perceived, and your likely effectiveness as a leader. With that in mind, then you can start taking corrective action steps or countermeasures to find and really start moving into that area of learning how to be confident and humble at the same time. So what we have talked about, and again, we have 6 strategies you can deploy in order to find that balance between humility and confidence. So it starts with receiving feedback. And this is really, feedback that you can do in a simple exercise. And although I don't want to prescribe to any one of you to which one of these 2 that you want to start with, but I think that feedback is very powerful. Now, it requires you to set the stage and lead to context that you are open-minded to receive critical feedback, and really encourage that the exercise is something like this, that you're going to ask the people who you work with, your peers, your director, or your subordinates, to document 3 to 5 things that they see that you could improve upon. Similar for 2 to 3 things that you're really good at and that you should do more of, and then some open comments. It is only when you open yourself up to that first category of what it is that is not going so well, or where they can see improvement is necessary, when you can be open to that, that you can start making real improvements. And we call these things sometimes in a 360 review, which is a more formal thing that is usually driven to HR. This is an informal way, but very important that you do this in context. You explain to the people this is truly a safe zone, where you are trying to learn about you in this moment, right? It is not a reflection on them. And of course, you should never retaliate against anybody who is willing to speak up, because that will ruin the moment going forward. The second thing is that, when we talk about worth and performance, we used the analogy the other day about if you take a $100 bill, the value is $100. You throw it on the floor, you crumble it up, you step in the mud, and you open it up, you go to the bank, it's still $100. It is learning to separate, not only for the people who work for you, but really it starts with you, right? It's really the intrinsic value of you, to understand that your personal worth, your value, your ethics are separated from how you perform. And once you understand what that is and how to formulate your worth and your performance aspect, you will grow as a professional, and then you can make adjustments to that. Really what it means in the end of the day is you can still be a person of great stature, even if you're struggling in a particular performance area. Just because you don't perform well, and it could be for a myriad reasons, your worth is not diminished. Now, the important thing is to look at your employees through the same lens. Love is more the motherly love. Now, we're going to talk about being responsible as a leader, and I'll talk a lot more about love in that sector. So I'm going to leave it here. But so looking at how you love yourself is really important as you start assessing your level of confidence. And I used the analogy yesterday about leading a horse. A horse will immediately sense fear or lack of confidence, and therefore will be less likely to want to go with you, right? They have a really strong sense who is the confident leader in the pack that they will follow to its death. Well, you have to understand and find how you love yourself, what your level of confidence is. Again, that is about having discussions and insight over a period of time. Talents is about leveraging your strength. Now, we have a diverse group of people on the line today, and people have participated in the past. None of us are alike. And the reason why that is that all of us come from cultural backgrounds that are very, could be very different from each other. We have either been born on different continents or different countries around the world. Therefore, we have been exposed to different experiences. Out of those experiences, we take actions, and those actions deliver results. Now, we have developed strength in areas of liking along the way, and we need to understand that and find what that is. Confirm that it is not only you can see that strength, but also those people that you lead or work with, so you can leverage that. And leveraging is not holding it against somebody, but leveraging is how can you work with others to leverage your strength and make the team better. So diversity of thought on your team is really, really important, right? It is It will only make you better to have people from different backgrounds and different capacities and different competencies in order to drive improvement and help you think outside of the box. So values is something that you develop over time too, and it starts likely at home, when in the way you grow up and the people that you idolize in your family in your formative years. But as you go to work, maybe even as you start, if you go to college, you will start seeing people around you that you admire. But it is, not well advised, or it's ill advised, I should say, that you model yourself after one particular person. Now, I'll tell you from personal experience, I've worked with just about every personality that I can think of and that we talk about. But each one of them also had good things. And we talked a little bit about Steve Jobs yesterday. He is certainly not a leader that I would want to mimic. I'm not a hoot and holler and screamer. But he was an innovator. He was crazy about thinking outside of the box and stretching people's ability. But that's a value that is something that comes down to a liking or a value that I can connect with, being an innovator. So there's an exercise here that you can go to your own inventory of people that you have worked with or you have read about, you have seen on television, and extract the values that they live, and see how you can become, assess who you are as a leader and what values do you want to be connected to. And then the last but not least is the commitment. And we talked a little bit about the commitment model yesterday, is to understand how deeply committed you are as a leader and where you are on the scale. Remember, there were 6, the commitment on top, and then the non-commitment, ranging all the way from I'm all in, no matter what happens, I'm there, to almost the saboteurs, and no matter what happens, I'm not in. Where are you? Where are your team members? And learning to see where it is. Now, the commitment, to me, starts with purpose and passion. Having the right people in the right roles is paramount in the success of you and your organization. So there's always an assessment, and we'll talk about that more in our operational leadership program later in the academy, is that how do I assess if I'm the right person for the right role? And I was taught a long time ago, there are 4 P's. There's purpose and passion, and there's people and process. And if you are aligned along those 4, you are really strongly committed to the outcomes. And that is another exercise you can do for yourself if you are wondering if you are in the right role or not. All right, this is the last slide, and then I would like to go to the discussion about where you can identify yourself in these 4 quadrants. So this is the strengthening the confidence and humility exercise that you can choose to do. And that is really going back to slide 1, and you can even go back to the manual itself to identify where you are, where are your differentiating strengths in these quadrants, to get a deeper understanding on where you are and what the opportunity is. And don't, try to be really honest with yourself, right? Nobody says that you have to be in the top right-hand corner today. It is very likely that some of you have been exposed for an extended period of time on being very directive as a leader, because you've been told what to do for your entire career, because those are the bosses that you have had. That is your normal. Going forward, we're trying to make sure that we start to learn how to lead through context. Instead of telling people what to do, we want to lead through context and get people to believe in what needs to be done, therefore driving performance to a different level. So this is the model that, again, an option that you have for the students to execute. And I would like to have a discussion now for the next 10-15 minutes around the topic of these 6 strategies. And I'll go back to the original confidence model, to where you see yourself today, after the discussion on Wednesday, after what we just talked about today. And do you see yourself that you need to improve in a particular area? And again, open discussion in a safe zone is important. If you have experience in any one of these categories and you have made a shift that's based on an experience and an exposure in the past, I would love to hear about that too. So I'll turn it over to all of you, and we'll answer any questions you may have.
I mean, I can start with some feedback that I had just from trying to like sort out where I stand currently, like what in IT we call our current state is. For me, it's been trying to understand as I'm trying to almost grade myself, which how much of this is under my control and how much of this is like outside environmental impact. So I have pretty good self-worth, I would say, not built on unstable foundations for myself. I know my worth, I know my knowledge base. Um, but sometimes, I work for an enterprise and, we're in a safe place. I work for an enterprise arm of our health system, and there's a lot of moving parts, decision makers, leadership, and stuff. And so sometimes I feel like that stuff makes me unstable because I get put in a position where I have to shift and I'm not ready. So I don't really know where that puts me. Am I grading that as part of this? Am I just trying to keep it solely for the stuff that I can control for myself? I just want to, I don't want to
No,
spin
that's a
my
really good.
wheels.
That's actually a really good question. You're in a unique position. You are in a facilitator position, right? IT
Yeah.
is a support service, not a core, supplier. So I would say that you have really two opportunities. When you have two circles, I always say, listen, we have a choice of work within our own circle of influence and make the change we need to have, or sometimes when the an Venn diagram where those circles overlap, right, where you have something that you control but not always control, similar to what you are talking about. The key thing is that, and that holds true, how you present to yourself to the client directly is important. And I think that you have already some understanding on how you present yourself in a larger group where you have less influence. Now, it is really, as leaders, we have two jobs, right? One is to continue to make adjustments to the situation that we are in. So therefore, there is no cookie cutter approach to anything. You're just taking all the things that you will be learning and doing, and you already have built up in your own inventory, and you put them into action depending on the situation that you're in. Now, if you have a very directive leader, for example, who is telling you what to do, but you come across something that you feel like, I'm not in agreement with that. If you are at the core not strong, in other words, your weakness is that you are too nice and you don't have the ability to give critical feedback back, or that you have that dependence, right? You have that fear factor, and again, go to the manual, you can read about it a little bit more. Then the opportunity in that setting is, how can you overcome that and build up the confidence that you can have a discussion or ask that question that needs to be asked, not to challenge the person who is telling you what to do, but really to open up dialogue and try to create that safe zone in order to get the answers. And I used the analogy the other day about NASA, right? 1986, when this space shuttle came down, there were engineers in the room who knew that those O-rings were a danger, and they said nothing.
Right.
You can blame the leadership for that because they didn't create a safe environment where everybody was. So there were really two things. There was no safe environment, and there was group things. In other words, everybody just sat there when the leader said check, 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 and they were, bobbing heads. That is the fact that their confidence and insecurity were low. Right. So it is, and so you have to identify that and recognize, and then you can learn how to work on those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, to me, it seems like almost from whose perspective, when we were looking at the arrows, the green and the red, some of the red arrows, I'm like, I definitely have some of those red arrow qualities currently. Actively and openly disagrees is probably one of them. And I have to figure out how do I turn actively and openly disagreeing with my leadership or enterprise policies and procedures and turn that into something that's green, that's more constructive, and how much of that's really in my control in an enterprise organization of 70,000 people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, listen, it is, but not saying anything might lead to a disaster.
Yeah.
Right. So learning to have a conversation and create a safe zone with your boss to open, or the leader of that particular meeting or subject, whatever, is one of those skills that you want to develop. Sitting on your hands or putting your hands over your eyes and pretend nothing has taken place while you know something is not right, or you should have said something, is where we want to make the change. And by the way, none of that is easy, right? This is all hard stuff, and that's why it takes practice. That's why, in our coaching sessions throughout the next 15 weeks, you can bring these types of topics up, and we can work, through that together. And that's why I encourage all of you in IDP to start looking for a mentor or a coach post the program, so you continue to have these conversations as you continue to build up your core strengths and abilities. Very insightful, David. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
All right, we have 7 minutes left. Who else would like to jump in and share something that you already learned over the last couple of days since we met on Wednesday, or an experience you'd like to share?
Well, something I've learned is that I really have never taken a very hard look at myself before, and where my strengths and weaknesses lie. I just kind of, I guess I'm very goal oriented and task oriented, and I've always felt that if I accomplished tasks that I was assigned, that I was doing okay. But now I'm seeing I'm not really doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, and it's sometimes difficult to honestly assess yourself, because you want to think that everything you're doing is great, and you're leading everyone and rah rah go. But I could tell you I've learned so much. I guess I have a few characteristics from each one of these boxes, I would say. Obviously, I want to get more towards the upper right, like you said, but I find myself heavily towards the bottom, which is not where I want to be. So I guess I'm in the right place to learn how to change myself. And I like what you said about just taking one or two behaviors to score yourself on, because I think it would be overwhelming to try and fix every single thing that's wrong all at once. And someone else had told me a long time ago, don't do a whole bunch of things at once, because then you don't know what's working. So you should just do.
That's very insightful. So prioritization by order of how you weigh the impact of your behavior is what I would recommend. So that's no different than, when you look at your mailbox, prioritize your mailbox to what is most important, 1, 2, 3, and then execute against 1, 2, 3. If you look at the totality, you get overwhelmed and nothing gets done. When you talk about I task or I results, this is really about we results, right? It's the and how can we make people who are working for you directly or indirectly, how we can get them to be able to be part of those results, and likely the results will be better because of it. An engaged and committed team who feels that they can be part of, can be heard along the way, can be considered. You allow them to test drive. In other words, you encourage creativity, will lead to better results along the way. So again, really insightful comment, Christine. It is that's a starting point, right? And it is. If you look at it, this is I'm perfect in the top right hand corner. It's like going to the quality meeting and saying all my PI metrics are 100%. Sure they are. You just didn't look hard enough, right? In other words, you don't have the behavioral capacity to stand in front of a crowd and say, listen, I'm at 91% rather than 99%, right? So it is learning to do that from a point of that supports your values and your integrity, that when things are not perfect, to say they're not. And once you know and understand that you can then drive for continuous improvement to get better every single day. So yeah, prioritization of the behaviors is a really good starting point. And don't do this in a silo by yourself. Do it together with a coach, a mentor, and with your team for that matter. Maybe getting some insight, getting some really good feedback from different angles is really a good place to start. On that note, the survey, I got most of the results back. We're just putting it into a readable format. So I'll be meeting with you next week to talk about that. I think the last time I checked, we had 30 or 32 out of 42 results back, and I'll check with Kirk later today, and we'll talk about those things next week. And that will help you as another way of applying this technique and these strategies. Thank you, Kim. All right, I think we have time for one more person.
For me, hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you, person?
Good. For me, I would say the self-worth and performance is something that I didn't think I had a struggle with or a problem with until last meeting, and then was reinforced this meeting that I do base worth based off performance. And I think it all stems from like how I was brought up. Basically, like there's a saying, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So basically, you perform based off the character. So if you're performing based off your character, then you're showing your worth. But at the same time, that's not always true, because your performance is not based off your I don't know. But yeah, so that's something I'm definitely gonna
Percy, I give you a little secret. I think that is an area that everybody struggles. Because our pride often gets into the way. Now, if you don't give two damns about anything, and because then you don't care about your self-worth, it's all performance driven. But those people tend to be more egocentric and really not team driven, right? It's all about I. So as you in healthcare, we tend to be more empathetic. We tend to be more about we, but our self-worth equation should be assessed. Because if we don't have a good understanding of that self-worthness, and that can be very different from scenario to scenario, right? It is, if you are in front of somebody who's even just taller than you are, your confidence level will go down, and your self-worth and performance evaluation can be impacted by that. You can have a strong alpha male or female that can have that type of impact on you as well. So different scenarios, different ways of evaluating your own self-worth to performance foundation, and you need to make adjustments accordingly. So there's no cookie cutter approach to doing it, but this requires a deep inside look in yourself and see how you feel when you're not performing, right? Do you value yourself less during that point in time? Then there's an opportunity for improvement. So again, really good comments. Thank you everybody for being online today. And by all means, carry this conversation forward. This is one area that we will continue to talk about for the duration of the next 15 weeks. It'll be part of your IDP and weekly discussions to continue to strengthen this. There's nothing that you can do today to be a better, to be best tomorrow. This is an ongoing process of building blocks and gaining strength. But really, it starts by understanding yourself. So again, thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. If you have any follow-up questions, by all means, you can always call me, text me, email me. I'll make myself available to try to answer all of your questions to the best of my ability. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.